Hello, welcome back to Reads of an Apple. My name is Stacy and I'm here today to fill out my first favorites bracket of 2022. I'm going in alphabetical order this year, so we are starting off with the contemporary subgenre. Now, this one is the biggest. It is the one I read the most books out of this year. And under contemporary, I encompass a lot of what I call subgenres. So we've got rom-coms, small town romance, dark romance, romantic suspense, holiday romances, and the list goes on and on. But contemporary comes first. If you do not know what the other main brackets I have that will be coming, we will be doing fantasy next, then historical romance, followed by paranormal, and then cap things off with sci-fi. But I just want to go over a couple little things here. So yeah, let's just get into it. All right, so here is my computer here, and I'm just going to show you. Last year when I filled out my brackets, I did it via Photoshop. However, this year I made them in Canva, so I'm just going to fill them out in Canva as well. But we'll go over kind of my basics here. So this year I did make a couple of little additions to what I'm doing here. So here is an overview of all of the books that are going to be on my bracket, but let's talk about the bracket first. So I did change things up slightly different. I put the books in a different order. I am going out of a 16 seed bracket, so that allows me to pick one favorite of the month plus 4 bonus books. And let me tell you, contemporary and fantasy were the hardest to pare down to just 16. But so we have, as you can see here, January versus October, March versus December, May versus bonus book 2, July versus bonus book 4, September versus February, November versus April, bonus book 1 versus June, bonus book 3 versus August. Down below will be a link to all of my brackets. I will also have it, or I'll put it in my link tree. I will make a copy of this in Canva if you would like to download these brackets and use them for yourself. I did go find some free wallpapers and images that I could use for backgrounds for each of these. And I went with this really pretty sunset, foggy ranch theme for the contemporary this year. Now, let us talk about the books. So I will kind of touch base on them more coming up, but let us just kind of zoom in here and take a closer look at the books that we are going to be talking about. So January, ooh, that's a little too big. Let's see here. See if we can get, okay, there we go. So January, I chose Pairing Off by Elizabeth Harmon. This is a sports romance, a figure skating romance. This is the first book in her Red Hot Russian series, and I gave this 5 stars. I loved it. I definitely want to read more in the series. That is a goal of mine, is to pick back up the series in 2023, but I love it. I do have a cheat sheet that I created, so I'll show you that when we finish going over these here. But I really, really love this. You could tell Elizabeth Harmon not only is a fan of figure skating, but was a part of the sport. I don't think she got past the collegiate level, or I don't even know if she got that far, but you could tell that she was a part. This is one of the best written figure skating romances where the figure skating aspects are done correctly and did not bother me, did not have made up things. I mean, they do made up moves, kind of like, you know, the Pamchenko from Cutting Edge and things like that. But I loved this book. It was one of the first books I read of the year, and it's still I think about this book often, and I am a big fan of it. I did not continue the series though, because when I went to look at the second book, one of the characters is a figure skater, but it's not based around figure skating like this one is. So I did not pick it up. Plus, that was right after the Russian-Ukraine issue. And then I just felt weird picking up a series called The Red Hot Russians at that time. But basic kind of overview, I'm going to try to go through all of these quickly. But I have talked about all these books all year in all of my weekly vlogs and wrap-ups and things like that. So this one is an American figure skater, and they are both pair skaters. And when her partner, after they win a world championship, or they place in a world championship final, he is found out to have been sleeping with one of the judges, so they are stripped of their title and basically get booted out of the figure skating world. And she is approached by a Russian trainer to join Anton. He had just lost his partner because she wanted to switch to someone who their partner, something happened, like she retired or she was injured or something like that, and she wanted a gold, so she went with this other guy who is better for her style of skating than Anton, and she's definitely the flower and not the nicest person a lot of the time. But so Anton gets paired with Carrie, and she is invited to Russia. They pay for her stay, and it is their romance, and I loved it to pieces. Okay, moving on. So for February, I chose One Hot Italian Summer by Karina Halley. I'm late to the game on this one. I gave it 5 stars. This is Grace and Claudio. Grace is an author, and she is one half of an author duo. And when her writing partner passes away, she was also her best friend, she is kind of in a funk and she doesn't know where to pick back up in her writing career. And so her agent sends her to a villa house situation in Italy, and come to find out it is her ex-husband's or just former partner. They have a child together. It is his house, but they're usually on vacation at this time, so she was letting her stay there, but they end up coming back from vacation early, so she spends the summer with Claudio and his adorable son. And I love this, and I read it in February, which maybe is not the best time to read heat of the summer romance, but I definitely enjoyed my time reading it. Okay, moving on. So we have March. I finally picked up The Opposite of You by Rachel Higginson. Jessen and Juliet from Smart Women Read Romance podcast have waxed poetic about this book for years, or at least it feels like years. And I finally picked it up. I loved this book in this series. I binged the entire series. I read all the books, and then I found out right away that a spin-off of the series was gonna start being released a couple weeks later, or a month later or something. Still have not started it, but this is a chef romance. We have Vera and Killian. There are some trigger warnings of a past abusive relationship for Vera, but they are both chefs, and she is back in town after this rough relationship she went through, and she's doing a food truck, and she is thankfully allowed to park her food truck in the parking lot of her brother's business, and there is a Michelin chef across the street, and it is their romance, and I loved it. I love this cover. I am a huge fan of Rachel Higginson. She's another one that I definitely need to read more of. April, we have Parks and Provocation by Juliet Cross. This is her first official release of a contemporary book, and this is Parks and Provocation. This is the second book in the Green Valley Heroes series. So this is a part of the Penny Reed Smarty Pants romance universe. So this is actually set in Green Valley, which is where her Winston Brothers series is set. I love this. This is Lola and Jed. And Lola has returned home and runs into, it's a really fun like re-meet cute in the beginning. She is home for a little bit and she runs into someone that she had a crush on in high school, and he kind of ish made fun of her, so we've got a little bit of mutual pining, and they kind of made fun of each other as kids too, out of hurt. And it's their romance, and I mean, I will read anything Juliet Cross writes. I love this book to pieces. It was such a good way for her to start her contemporary, and I love that she's a part of the Smarty Pants romance universe. But I love this. The first book in the series is also really good, and I'm excited for more that she writes in this series, plus more of this series in a whole. And I don't know if I said, but both of these books are 5 stars. For my brackets this year, for the most part, I tried to do 4 stars or higher for my ratings. And then we've got May and June here, and we're going to talk about them together, because end of April into May, or maybe it was the end of May into June, I picked up Allie York's Word for Nerds series. I am obsessed with it. I am obsessed with it. So here we have, for May, I Touched My Shelf by Allie York. This is the 3rd book in the series. This is Tuesday and Leo. Tuesday is a twin, and she is actually the twin for the heroine in Tall, Dark, and Handsome. But this series is centered around a friend group of girls, and they all work/own a comic book store. So they're all nerdy, geeky in different ways. They play D&D, they're into comics, they're into Marvel movies. But what I love about this series, and I love the series, I feel like I've talked about it a lot lately because all of these favorite things are coming back up. But I love that each of them, like, they're all overall just geeky and nerdy, but they all have their niche. Like, one's into fantasy and fantasy books, and one is super into cosplay, and one's really into comics and video games. And so while they all are just generally geeky into a lot of geeky, nerdy activities and cultures and things like that, and fandoms, they also do have their favorite little sections that is like what they like, what speaks to them the most out of everything. And it was very hard to pick I Touched My Shelf, but I had to give it to Tuesday and Leo. Like I mentioned, Tuesday is a twin, and she has been crushing on the heroine from, I think, book 2's book, her older brother, since they were in like high school. She has always felt that she was in love with him, but it has evolved. She talks about how it was a crush, and then he was cute, and then he went away to college and came back, and she was like, oh, it's still there. And so there is some mutual pining there. The brother owns a bookstore across the street. But Tuesday is our fantasy girl. She's constantly saying little like fake cussing things, but they're all like Lord of the Rings twisted. So she's like, oh, sweet little baby hobbits and things like that. And I love it. But she is a fantasy author, and she is hiding it from everybody. And she writes under a male pen name. And Leo reaches out to the author because he's heard her talk about him before, and he knows that she's a huge reader. So he is inviting him to come to his bookstore to do a signing, and he never does any signings, and they start kind of just talking to each other, and they become friendly. And at the same time, Tuesday and Leo are finally kind of pushing past that boundary that they both have set of staying kind of just mutual binding friends-ish. And I just loved it. I mean, we've got a secret author, we've got communicating and like without them knowing that they're talking to each other. We've got all the fantasy references, and we've got bookish stuff going on. I just loved it. I loved it to pieces. Another 5 stars. And then in June, the first book I read in June was A Tall, Dark, and Handsome, and this is Tuesday's twins book, and her name is Greer, and Greer is a striving comic book graphic novel artist, and she's been working on this one that she's been kind of posting online and drawing herself for a long time, and she's finally she's throughout the series up to this point, she's been in a weird on again, off again weird relationship. So she's finally done with it. So she's making it like the year of Greer, and she has all these rules that she's going to make, she's going to stick to. And one of them is working to actually making her comic published and like more tangible and working towards it being a viable career for her instead of just doing it on the side and working at Words for Nerds. And she ends up being in a romance with Brian, who is Tuesday's book agent, but he also owns an up-and-coming indie comic book publishing, and so there's this tension between them because she wants him to publish her book, but they're starting this little romance, but one of her rules were no men, and he is a person of color, which is even great. And this one gets steamy super quick. There's a very nice scene very early on where they play around on his office desk. And I was here for it. I loved it. I love this series. Definitely check out this series if you're into any sort of fandom, nerddom, geekdom, cultures. I love the series to pieces. Then we come to July, and surprise, surprise, we have another Julia Cross book on here, but this time it is the one that she has published by herself, so not through Smarty Pants Romance, and this is Bright Like Wildfire, and this is Betty and Bennett, and this was so good. This is small town romance once again, but this is kind of centered around the local community theater, of which Julia, I know, and her family takes part in. And it was just so much fun. It's just so much fun. I'm loving these contemporary books that she's writing, and I cannot wait to read more from this series. But there is a little bit of enemies to lovers-ish going on. She's upset with him because he tends to kind of do things unintentionally that hinder her, both just in general in life, like when he opens his new grocery store. It's like Whole Foods, Sprouts-ish. It's like a more healthy boutique grocery store. The opening causes traffic to slow down, and so she ends up getting late to work. And so she blames it all on him. But they end up getting the two main leads in this romantic community play. What are they doing? Let's see. It doesn't say in the blurb that I saved, but they're doing... I know it's a movie too, but they're doing a romantic play together, and so it's their romance at the same time that their characters that they're playing in the play are having a romance. Okay, moving on. I'm trying to go through these quickly. August's favorite contemporary was Her Unexpected Roommate by Jackie Lau. This is the final book in the Cider Bar Sisters series. This was Rose's book, who I was waiting for since book 1, because Rose suffers from depression, and I love the way that Jackie Lau handles different types of just common day mental health, physical health, racism, just race, social issues in her books. It's done very well, especially in her indie published books, where it doesn't feel heavy-handed and preachy. It just feels like what people are going through normally. And as someone who has suffered from depression in a completely different way. But I know that Jackie Lau, and she's mentioned it before, but she also mentioned this in her author's note, that she also suffers from depression. And so there is triggers for depression, suicidal thoughts in the past for our heroine, plus her mother committed suicide, and also some in the past by her mother degrading mental health talk. So be warned going in. This is one of the heavier Jackie Lau books out there, but I loved it. And Rose ends up meeting Cal, and he is younger than her, and she meets him at this steampunky themed bar. I think it's a bar. Maybe it's like a restaurant bar. But anyway, she meets him there. They end up having a little tryst, and she finds herself weirdly attracted and just very at ease with him. She's someone who also gets very anxious socially, and they have a one-night stand. But there is a plan. They do talk about how there is a connection moving forward, and they would like to kind of see each other more. And something happens, and he can't call her, and comes after some time passes. I want to say close to like 6 months to a year-ish. He ends up being her new roommate in the house that her friend owns, that she's been staying at and renting because she got married and moved next door. That was the first book. And then we really kind of get to see her struggle, and her depression is one that's not easily treated. She does go through a couple different things in this book with waves of depression, and it was just so well done. And it did have the rom-com-y, happy, foodie stuff that Jackie Lau does so well, but this is a little heavier than her other books, but it was also just so touching to myself, that just the way that she handled it all, it just was so nice. I'm going to take a drink of wine here, because this is a lot of talking. But I love this to pieces. And this is also one of the few books in this series where we get, technically, a couple of them are interracial, but this one is specifically a Caucasian male and an Asian female. And most of her characters are Asian, as Jackie Lau is an Asian author herself, and she is also a Canadian author. So we get lots of fun Canada things going on. So let us move on here. So my favorite book for September, I picked Gold Rush by Jenny Bunting. Now this is my first not 5 stars. I give this 4.5 stars. This is the second book in the Finch family series, and this is Whitney and Reed. And Whitney is a romance author, and she is childless by choice. And at the end of the first book, we find out that her and her husband has changed his mind on wanting children, and she's just like, you drove me to the surgery, to the doctor's appointments to get, my tubes surgically tied and like permanently done. I cannot have children. I don't. And he's just like, we can foster, we can adopt. And she's like, I don't want children. That was the thing for me. I don't want children. And so she ends up getting a divorce and coming to town because her good friend and like beta reader, or alpha reader, I guess technically, has come back home to the little town that they're from, which I am spacing on, Goldheart. And is there, and when she had visited her before, she got this rush of just good vibes and was able to write a bunch of words crazy quickly. And so she's in Goldheart to finish her next novel and just kind of reassess on what she wants to do, where she wants to live, and just kind of picking back up her life after the divorce. And like I said, I really enjoyed this. I'm a big fan of Jenny Bunting. This is the first series I've read with her. I'm almost completely caught up because the new book just dropped at the end of December, and I have not been able to pick that up yet. But I love this. All of the Finch family members, they own a brewery in this small town. And there are 3 brothers. Those are the 3 books out. And then the 4th book is going to be the sister. And she is a single mom. So I can't wait for that, which should be coming sometime this year. But I gave this one 4.5 because I did think that the enemies to lovers, there is a situation where they're enemies and kind of hateful towards each other, was a little too much in the beginning and went on just a little too long for my tastes. Then moving on to October, we have another Jenny Bunting book. Now this she has called a Goldheart novella, but in the Finch family kind of reading order, this is like book 2.5 because some of this does take place during Gold Rush, but then the rest happens afterwards. And in this book, we have Thumper, who is the best friend of Cameron, who's the hero from the first book, and he is at the local bank, and it gets held up by somebody in a chicken costume, and so he gets trapped in like the safe in the back with the new journalist in town, Izzy, and it is their romance. It's a novella. It's super cute. And this one I did give 4 stars because I am a little picky on how quickly I'd like things to go in my novellas and what I like to see relationship wise in my novellas. But I really enjoyed this, and it was a great addition to the series. It was really fun to actually see what happens because you hear it be like talked about in Gold Rush, and you're just like, what happened? And so it was fun to actually see what happened. Okay, so for November, I chose Finding You by Lena Hendricks. This is the first book in her Chickaloo Falls series. I gave this 4.5 stars. This is another book I really enjoyed. Lena Hendricks is another new to me author. I found her and Jenny Bunting from Elsie Silver because Elsie Silver is friends with them and was kind of promoting some of their books, so I added them to my radar. And I really, really enjoyed this one. We have Joanna and Lincoln. Joanna is a female like wilderness guide, and she takes guys fishing. There is a little bit of a sticky situation with some drunk guys, so just a little bit of a trigger warning for that. But the main kind of triggers and content warnings to really think about is Lincoln is a veteran, and he has just recently returned. He was a Marine, and so he is really struggling with PTSD and just kind of refinding his place in this small town and in society as a whole. But I love the connection that they have, and it was really good. I just thought that the way that he does the whole I'm pushing you away to protect you thing, because he flies off the hammer when that situation happens and goes after the guys that tried to hurt her. And they did kind of ish hurt her. They more just kind of bruised her arm when they tried to grab her, but she was able to get away. But he flies off the handle because he struggles with his anger as a part of his PTSD. So I didn't like the way that kind of situation went down, so I dropped it just a touch, but I did think that the grovel was super sweet. And then December, I of course had to pick one of the a billion frickin' holiday romances I read, and I went with Snowden with the Player by Rebecca Jenchak. This is my first book by Rebecca Jenchak. I am a big fan. I was choosing between this one and the second book in this duology, but I went with this one because I related to the heroine a little bit more. Plus, it was the first one I read, so it really kind of started my love of Rebecca Genshak. Now, this one is Holly and Teddy. This is new adult. They are both in college, and Holly and her sister are heading up to their family's cabin up in the mountains. And when they get there, even though their brother was supposed to be watching the family house, they find that him and his football friends are up at the house and partying until Christmas, and then they'll all go back to the like main house down in town. And she has been crushing on his good friend and teammate Teddy for a very long time. And we find out that he's been crushing on her. And there's a situation where they get snowed in together at the cabin, and the power goes out. And it's their romance, and we've got mutual pining. It's a perfect holiday novella, and I am a huge fan. I started reading her Campus Wallflower series. I've read the first book in that, and I bought the second book. And then I know coming up soon this year, the third or fourth book will feature her brother as the hero. And then the second book in this series is her twin sister. So if you're looking for a good holiday romance mini series to read next year, definitely look these up. I adored them. And then we get into my bonus reads. So I'm surprised some of these ended up in the bonus and not as my favorite of the month, but it was a struggle. It was a struggle, let me tell you. So for bonus book number 1, I had to do Reckless Miles, 5 stars. Cooper Miles. Need I say more? I am a huge Claire Kingsley stan. I still need to finish the Miles family, but Cooper just is this happy golden retriever, but he has that seriousness in him, and I just love the way that he is head over heels for Amelia and will do any and everything for her to make her happy. And just look at his cover. Cooper is the best. And it wouldn't be a favorites contemporary if I didn't have Elsie Silver on here somewhere, and I had to go with Flawless. It was a hard choice between Flawless and the final book in the Gold Rush Ranch series, but I had to give it to Flawless. I loved Summer and Rhett. This is the start of the Chestnut Springs series, which is a spinoff of Gold Rush Ranch, because these are all the brothers ranch, and this was a way to kick it off. Rhett is a rodeo rider professionally, and Summer is I guess she's technically an agent, or she works for her dad, who's an agent. And so she's basically babysitting him after some issues arise and some bad publicity heads her way. As Elsie Silver, I love Elsie Silver. I am an Elsie Silver stan, and I will read anything she writes. Almost all of her books are 5 stars for me, and I love them to pieces. On to bonus book number 3. Surprisingly, the only dark romance that made my contemporary list, but I just had to I tried to put at least one in there when I got to my bonus books, and I had to give it to Savage Hearts by J.T. Geisinger. This is the 3rd book in the Queens and Monsters series, and Riley and Mal, and we get kidnapping, forced proximity. And he's like a super spy. He's known as like a ghost and can get out of things, and I loved it. This is also Sloane's little sister, and I'm not the biggest Sloane. Like, I know people love Sloane, and I like Sloane too, but she's not my favorite heroine. And there were moments in this where I really disliked her for the way that she was treating Riley. But this one is such a good book, and I still haven't read the 4th book in the series. I am edging it so hard because I don't want this series to end, but I do need to read it. And then on to bonus book number 4 is Fool's Gold by Jenny Bunting. This is the first book in Finch Family. This is Annie and Cameron, and this is fake dating turned real dating. He's a playboy, and he kind of doesn't realize that he's had a crush on Annie forever, because he thinks that she's out of his league because she, he knows he's not like super intelligent dude. He's more than happy to just work for his family's brewery and just live life enjoying it. And so he's not really like striving to be the best or striving to have like the number one blah 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 and go to college and do like he's not an intellectual based character. And because Annie is like in his mind so smart and so brilliant, and she's a really good event planner, he thinks she's out of his league, so he crushes on her, but he kind of friend zones himself without her knowing. And she also thinks the same way because he's never made a move on her, and he's made a move on like every other eligible woman in town that she feels like he doesn't like her. And she is kind of going through a weird situation where she was secretly dating her boss's son, and then it comes out that he's getting engaged to someone as a business arrangement. And so she gets Cameron to fake date her, and then they very quickly act on the attraction between them. And I gave this one 5 stars. So far, it's my favorite of the series. I am a big fan of Annie and Cameron. So there we have it. And the 4, all 16, but the 4 bonuses, all 16 of my prompts. I will just kind of throw out a couple honorable mentions. Okay, so these are all books I really loved, but just didn't make my list. They didn't make it. The first is Falling Like Stars by Eve Casey. This is the first book in her All In series. 5 stars. This is Elle and Chen. They are set at a private space exploration company. He is a Chinese astronaut, and she is a experience planner. So she's not just planning the event of going to space. She plans every tiny single step from the moment they step off the plane to arrive at the facility to when they step off the property and head back home. So I love the way that her job was described. I've never thought of a job like that, and it was so cool and very interesting. Then we have another space book. My honorable mention number 2 is Space Junk Houston. We have a hottie. This is by Sarah L. Hudson. This is the first book in her space series, and this is Jackie and Flynn. And Jackie is she works at NASA. She's one of the people that's at the Houston base, and she is good friends with one of the astronauts currently at the space station, and she, is a big manager there, and talk about intellectual based character. She is a smart cookie, and I loved seeing a woman in that field and so high in that field. She may or may not be Asian. I couldn't really tell. There were some descriptions that made it seem like she was maybe partially Asian or partially mixed race of some kind, but it wasn't flat out said. So I don't know. So that's kind of throwing it out there. But her romance is with Flynn, who is basically a male socialite around town. He does mechanic work by himself, but he comes from a family of one of the millionaire ranchers down in Texas. But he has since left that like socialite scene. And then the final honorable mention I had to throw in there is Do Not Fall in Love by Jackie Lau. I gave this book 4.5 stars. Let's be honest, it's like 4.95 stars because what I docked it for wasn't about our main characters here, Lindsay and Ryan. This is Jackie Lau's first traditionally published romance, which was so amazing to see. And I love this. I love Lindsay and Ryan. Lindsay is a baker. Ryan is an actor. It was just... And because this was traditionally published, we got like 100 more pages than what Jackie Lau typically writes. So it just... Oh, it was so good. The only detractor that I just could not give it for was the friend of Ryan, who is actually the hero of the second book. He is a actor and stand-up comedian, and we get his whole long monologue in here that wasn't really comedic and mostly social commentation, and it just felt out of place and kind of took me out of the book because it was all from his point of view, and he's not even one of the main characters in this book. And it just was so much more heavy-handed than she usually touches base on things like that, but that could just be the character. And it wasn't really funny, but I know comedy is kind of a hard thing to get across, let alone a stand-up comedian in written form. So it just bothered me so much, and it just took me so much out of the story that I did end up docking it down to 4.5 stars. But outside of that one little snippet, this book is absolute gold. And that's it. There we have it. That is, too far. My 16 books plus 3 honorable mentions. And we are already at 40 minutes. Holy cow. So I'm going to, since we talked about books first, hopefully fill out my brackets easier. So let us just kind of get to it. I will close this. All right, so here is my bracket. I have it pulled up on Canva. And so we will just kind of get to it. And then just so you know, I did say I wanted to touch base. I did create a brackets info sheet for myself. This is where I had all my notes about what I was talking about the books with my rating. And then I did the title, author, if it was a part of a series, the 2 main characters' names, and then some blurbs. And I did this for all of my books just as a little reference point for myself. So that is what I did. And I did it for all of my books. So there's a little sneak peek of what sci-fi looks like. But yeah, so let me get that closed here. And we will just get into it. We will zoom in. We can zoom in more. Gotta find that sweet spot. Okay. So we have Pairing Off versus Safe With You. This one is easy for me. I'm going to do Pairing Off for sure. It was so good. I loved it to pieces. So good. Okay, then we have The Opposite of You versus Snowed In with the Player. They both sent me on a binge. I would have definitely read more from, I definitely read more from Rebecca Genchak, but I would have read more from her at the time. I could, if it wasn't December, and I was trying to get through as many holiday novellas for Vlogmas. Oh, this is a hard choice. I think I gotta do The Opposite of You. I think it hit everything I needed. It was just so good. Oh my gosh, this is so. Oh my gosh. I Touch Myself versus Flawless. I can't. Okay, we're gonna come back to this one. I can't. Bright Like Wildfire versus Fool's Gold. Oh, this is a tough one. I love Juliet. But Fool's Gold was really good. Oh my gosh, that's another hard one. And they have very similar covers. Oh my god. Okay. We're gonna come back to those guys. I can't. It's too hard already. Okay, Gold Rush versus One Hot Italian Summer. I'm going to give it to One Hot Italian Summer. That looks good. Okay, then Finding You and Parks and Provocation. Parks and Provocation, for sure. Not only was it 5 stars and the other one not 5 stars, Parks and Provocation was really good. Plus, it was the first contemporary romance I read from Juliet, and it was amazing. Okay, Reckless Miles versus Tall, Dork, and Handsome. I'm going to give it to Reckless Miles. As much as I love Tall, Dork, and Handsome, it's Cooper. It's Cooper. It's Cooper. And then Savage Hearts versus Her Unexpected Roommate. I hate to kick out Jackie Lau since she's one of my favorites contemporary authors ever. And I will read anything she writes. But I gotta give it to Savage Hearts. I wasn't sure what to think about Savage Hearts because I loved the first book. The second book, I gave 4 stars. I still liked it, but I had some issues with it. But the third book hooked me back in. So I gotta go with that one. All right. I'm gonna go with Fool's Gold. As much as I love Bright Like Wildfire, I feel like I connected with Fool's Gold a little bit more. Plus, I feel better that we can have Parks and Provocations to moving on. So, that's such a hard choice. I still don't know what to do with this one. I gotta do I Touch My Shelf. I loved Flawless, but this series I completely binged. It was so good. It touched me in ways I was not expecting from silly little novellas off of KU. Okay, I don't know why we're not centering. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so there we have it. Round 1 is done. So moving on to round 2. I want to zoom out and I'm going to lock it and duplicate it. Okay, on to, that's fine. Maybe I didn't need to duplicate it, but that's fine. That's fine. Okay. If I was going to do that, I should have duplicated it after the first one, but we're fine. Whatever. I'll just move on and I'll fix it all later. Okay. So we will zoom back in here. We have Pairing Off versus The Opposite of You. Oh, both 5 stars. I went on a Rachel Higginson bin, but Pairing Off was so good. I gotta give it to Pairing Off. I just have to. It just was so freaking good. All right, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit because you're doing really big jumps on me here. Sure, that looks good. Okay, I Touch My Shelf versus Fool's Gold. I gotta give it to I Touch My Shelf. I just have to. Okay. All right, moving on. You know, talking about them all first before filling out the bracket, I think helped this year. Last year, it was the struggle because I talked about them while I made the decisions, but it kind of helped that I could kind of talk through things first and then look at the brackets. I think that I like that we did it that style this time. Parks and Provocation versus One Hot Italian Summer. Parks and Provocation. Oh, Parks and Provocation. Okay, and then Reckless Miles and Savage Hearts. Oh, I gotta give it to Cooper. That hurts a little bit. Oh, I hate having to choose between my babies. I hate it. Okay, so there we go. Round number 2 is done. Whoop. Super zoomed out here. Okay. Moving back in. I guess I was hoping we could type on it, but okay. Oh my gosh, we are almost done. This is crazy. This bracket is filling out fast. So we have Pairing Off versus Parks and Provocation. And then I touch my shelf versus Reckless Miles. Why do I do this to myself? Why do I do this to myself? I touch my shelf. Gut reaction. Gut reaction. Oh. And these are bigger squares, so we will bump it up. Okay. That's a little too big for me. Okay. Oh, Bearing Up versus Parks and Provocation. Oh my gosh, this is so hard. So hard to choose. Parks and Provocation. Gut reaction, and I feel comfortable with that. I was like, if I instantly have that, oh no, I chose wrong vibe, then I know which one it really is. But I didn't get that vibe, so I think we're okay. So there we go. Round 3 is done. On to our final round. Oh my gosh. Parks and Provocation versus I Touch My Shelf. Oh man. I gotta give it to Parks and Provocation. I love Touch My Shelf, and it hit me. It hit me so strong. Oh my gosh, scroll up please. But I have to give it to Parks and Provocation because it was a lot longer. There was a lot more substance to it. But honestly, you could pick up any of these books on my bracket and probably have the best time. So here we go. Center it off. There we go. Our winner for 2022 contemporary romance is Parks and Provocation by Juliet Cross. That wasn't that bad. I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, I'm feeling good about it. But thank you so much for watching. If you, please, like I said, check out any of these books if you're interested in them, or if you've read them and love them, please let me know. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm gonna stop here because I want to try to keep this under an hour. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought, or let me know what your favorite contemporary romance of 2022 was. Or if you're interested in doing the brackets and you choose to fill them out yourself, definitely let me know, because I definitely want to see what other people do for brackets if they fill them out. And if you'd rather just leave me an emoji, leave me something firefighter related for Parks and Provocation. So like a Dalmatian or fire or something fun like that. But otherwise, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you all very soon. And remember, coming up next is my fantasy bracket. See you soon.